What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here with Cheesehead TV, coming to you live with your Packers Daily Chat. Good to see you all already populating the chat. A lot of angst/excitement after the Packers had a bit of a mini bye. Clearly, nobody wants to relive that Seattle game, but lots to talk about, lots to get to. Let's dive right in. Jorge saying, "Hi, Aaron. David put a list on the website of names to replace McCarthy. Arians, LaFleur, McDaniels, Carmichael. I want McCarthy to stay. What do you think? And do you like those names?" I got to be honest. When it comes to talk about Mike McCarthy's job situation, I don't think anything matters until we see what happens on Sunday night. The Packers clearly still in the playoff race. I know no one wants to admit that, the Packers fans who are anxious to usher McCarthy out the door, but they still have a real shot at this thing. But it all starts Sunday night in Minnesota. Nothing else matters. Once we know the output of that game, the outcome, whether they come out with a victory or they head back home with a defeat, will tell us a lot about the direction this team is going in. This is basically the start of the playoffs on Sunday night. I'll be interested to see how they adjust from what they've learned after the tough stretch coming out of that bye week. But the gloves are off. It is time to put up or shut up. Will they salvage the 2018 season? Or will they punt, as Mike McCarthy did on 4th and 2 in Seattle? Packers have the benefit of more days to prepare compared to the Vikings. If they can't play better now, there is no chance to make the playoffs. If they can, they have a friendly schedule going forward. George, that's fairly true, especially after they get around that Bears game. But that Bears game is lurking there, and as you saw last night, they dismantled the Vikings. That's going to be a tough one. But other than that, yeah, you are correct. Their schedule is favorable. Can we win the wild card if we lose to the Vikings? William, they can technically, but it will be a long road. Peter, the Bears still suck. Correct. Rodgers seems broken. It seems dramatic. He does seem down, though. He does seem to be a bit of a sourpuss these days. It would help him if he got the ball out of his hand in time and stop trying to run when there's nothing there and just hit the check down. It might improve his brokenness. Can we finally start Fackrell over Perry? Well, as far as I know, Alex, Perry is still injured, so probably it's going to happen by default. Is Kenny Clark going to start after his injury on Thursday? Chris, we won't have a good read on that until Wednesday afternoon when we get our first look at the injury report. McCarthy spoke a little while ago. He did mention that Mike Daniels will definitely miss at least a few weeks, which certainly puts them behind the 8 ball heading into Minnesota, trying to stop that running game, trying to get after the quarterback. McCarthy indicated that they will be having conversations these next 48 hours. Undoubtedly, they will be bringing in some defensive line help heading into Sunday night's game. Judy, hi. Thanks for joining us. Tyler, Dalvin Cook is bad. I don't think he's bad. I think you saw something pop up last night against Chicago, which was one of the reasons he fell in the draft, which was his fumbling issue. The other thing was the off-field stuff that had kind of floated around heading into that final season in college. You throw all that together, and that was one of the reasons he fell. And the fumble came at a real inopportune time for Minnesota, obviously. He's still a talented guy, though. Talented back who I would not call bad by any stretch of the imagination. The Vikings are very overrated this season, especially Cousins. Well, yeah, you saw Cousins airmail a really bad one last night. How big of a mistake was it to let Jared Cook walk? Daniel, that's a good point. I think it was a mistake. I don't know about how big of a mistake it was. I mean, would he be helping this team right now? Probably. But I think this is a team that is not just a Jared Cook away from winning in LA or winning in New England. Those have been self-inflicted wounds that killed them in those games. Jared Cook being there or not really probably wouldn't have made a difference. Overall, I think it was a mistake to let him go, but that was years ago. It's time to move on. What do I think of Pete Carmichael? Dalton, I was talking to a friend of mine last night about that very name. For those of you who are unaware, he's the offensive coordinator down in New Orleans. I think the thing that's always kind of held him back as far as name recognition being in the conversation when it comes to head coaching gigs is, Peyton calls the plays. It's Peyton's offense. Now, he has had a bit of a run, and he is well regarded around the league. I do think he's a name, somebody that the Packers may look at if they decide to move on from McCarthy. But again, That's a long way away. A lot's going to happen between now and the end of the season. All that matters is Sunday night. When did Jay Cutler will his body language and skunk face to 12? I missed the ceremony. Ooh, Derek. I don't know, but that's a fantastic comment. Let's all head over to Twitter and see what people are saying on the old Twitter machine today. Starting with Tony here, who asks, is a guy like Eric Bieniemy of the Chiefs ready to take over a team like the Packers, or would the Packers be looking at someone with more experience? That's a really good question. I do think, obviously, Mark Murphy is the only one who can answer something like that. But I will say, I will be surprised if Murphy goes a similar route Ted Thompson went when he plucked Mike McCarthy with no head coaching experience to lead the Packers. I don't know. With everything at stake, Titletown, trying to become, expanding that operation, etc., all the business interests surrounding the Packers, I just would be very surprised if Murphy did go a route of, not just, I don't think he's unknown, especially in NFL circles, but someone who hasn't, if not head coaching experience in the NFL, at least head coaching experience somewhere along the line. That's not to say he wouldn't be in consideration, but like I said, I do think it would be someone with a bit more Q rating, maybe would be the name there, but again, only Mark Murphy can answer that question. Oh, I hate it when I do that. What else we got? Is it possible for a good defense to demoralize its own offense in practice, like to the point of the offense struggling in regular games? Don's tinfoil hat. Is this possibly happening with the Packers? Nick, no. How come nobody wants to see the play of Rodgers is in effect partially because of the QB coach, Cignetti? I don't see any kind of working relationship there. Thanks, Packer Transplants is awesome. Brian, thank you for that. Well, I think anybody who covers the team or covers the NFL is always kind of hesitant to make that direct correlation just because it's so hard to get any kind of gauge as to what assistants do behind the scenes, and assigning, the idea of, well, they clearly don't have a great relationship or they're clearly not working well together. What we see on the sidelines with television captures, etc., that is such a tiny sliver of what is going on behind closed doors. Now, that said, Cignetti did not exactly cover himself in glory earlier this year when he was asked about a particular set of throws by Tom Silverstein in the media auditorium, and he feigned ignorance as to what Tom was talking about. I never like to see that. I just, own up to either one of two things is happening there. Either he truly doesn't remember what throws Tom was talking about. There were certain incompletions by Rodgers, which is a red flag, or he's straight up lying, which is kind of even worse. So that's a coaching outward-facing note, which doesn't really directly affect his relationship with Rodgers, but it does reflect on him as a coach. But all of that said, I would never prescribe what we see on the sidelines and or in public with what is actually going on in meeting rooms, in practice, etc. Only Aaron Rodgers can answer that, and it would take him being asked directly and having a truthful response. The Packers are usually on point with letting players go at the right time. Do you think retaining Mike McCarthy for another season was 1 year too many? Only the rest of the season of 2018 can answer that question. You have to let it play out. Think about this. Sitting where they are right now, they are essentially, with one half game difference, where they were when they were 4-6 2 years ago and ended up running the table. They were within one game of the Super Bowl that season. However, if in the moment, sitting at 4-6, heading into that Monday nighter against Philadelphia, you had said, well, it's clear that Mike McCarthy's been around too long, he should be gone, etc., and then they made that magical run, well, that changes the conversation. It clearly did in Green Bay. I think you cannot make those determinations in season. You have to let things play out. Now, could they lose on Sunday night and continue their losing ways and bumbling offense, etc., and say finish, worse than 500? Absolutely. And then I think the conversation can be had about they let McCarthy stick around too long. But you have to let his body of work speak. At the end of the year, we will be able to say, okay, this is the product. Now let's make a determination on the job he did. I have railed against McCarthy a whole lot this season. I understand that. I understand watching the product he has put on the field week after week and being frustrated with it. Lord knows I've been part of that. But when it comes to season-long defining characteristics and or determinations for his job, I can only allow the season to play out. And then we can speak on the job he did as a head coach in 2018. I've heard you say previously you like the idea of a defensive-minded head coach if Mike is gone next year. Can you elaborate on why? I'm trying to remember. I don't think I specifically said I prefer a defensive coach. I do know I've said that teams often react to the last coach. Now, in Green Bay, that's been a bit different. Obviously, they've stayed on the offensive side, usually because of Favre and or Rodgers. I don't think it's specifically I would prefer a defensive coach. I would love Joe Witt Jr. to get an interview, and I would love the idea of him as a head coach, though I don't think that's realistically going to happen. I do think, it would behoove the Packers to get a little nastier, and those guys tend to pop up on the defensive side of the ball. But it's not a question of preferring one side of the ball or the other. Best man for the job is the best man for the job, and only Mark Murphy can make that determination. I know you're fond of the man, but do you believe Joe Witt Jr. or any other in-house head coach candidates will be able to rein in Rodgers? Not really. I think that's part of the problem in Green Bay is that all those relationships have become so comfortable. I do think it will take someone from outside the building to make something like that happen. Let's get back to the live chat. What's going on over here? Nick Saban for head coach. Matt, keeping it realistic. I like it. Is the run game going to be imperative against Minnesota again, or will we have to have a big passing game? You would like to see them lean on that running game. It's really hard to get going in that building, though. The noise factor, the defense being able to kind of tee off, knowing that Rodgers has to go with the silent count, getting into that kind of rhythm. It's hard for the Packers' offensive line to fire off and get much going. I keep saying it. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. I do think their best mode of attack on Sunday night is to spread things out and go to the quick rhythm passing game. And I know I keep saying it because I wish they would do it. But until Mike McCarthy agrees, I guess we're not going to see it. But to me, that is the simplest, best way to go about attacking this Minnesota Vikings team. Now, they're a very different creature in the dome than they are on the road. We saw how the Bears took them apart last night, but that's a very different environment. Their defensive line is still very good, and Harrison Smith and company on the back end, they can cause a lot of problems. So to me, it's all about getting the ball out of Aaron's hands quickly. Lots of three-step drops, etc., because I just don't think they can hold up in that environment against the defensive front of the Vikings. What do you think of one of the Harbaugh brothers becoming the next head coach of the Green Bay Packers? I doubt it would ever happen with Jim. John, maybe, but I know there's been some buzz around him possibly being let go in Baltimore. I don't think that's very realistic, but you never know. Rodgers asked what Seattle did different in the second half, and he said nothing really. Another shot at McCarthy and his play calling? I didn't take it as that. I think he was honestly saying they didn't execute. I think he was including himself in that assessment. I mean, there were so many third and shorts where he could have just gotten the ball out of his hand, hit the check down, etc., that he didn't, And I know we've become accustomed to Rodgers' kind of passive-aggressive shots at his head coach, but I don't think that was one of them. We need a Mike Tomlin in Green Bay. Oof. It's funny how earlier this year there was not a lot of talk, but I got a few consistently requests from fans saying we should have a Mike McCarthy for Mike Tomlin swap. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen, but that's where the Steelers were and Tomlin's kind of job prospects were, seemingly. And now that narrative has completely changed in Pittsburgh, obviously. They're having a hell of a season, whereas Mike is continuing to struggle. It just goes to show how quickly it can turn around. If the Packers go into Minnesota on Sunday night and find a way to win that game, all the conversation around Green Bay changes. It just does, and Mike's job. But they have to do it on the field. Do you feel that Mike McCarthy should continue to call plays? Bob, it really doesn't matter how myself or anyone around him feels because Mike has said point blank he will never give up play calling ever again. After the failed Tom Clements episode, that was one of the things he made the determination of is if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down doing it my way. And that's clearly how things are playing out so far in 2018. Mike Leach for head coach. Man, the press conferences alone would be worth it. All I want for Christmas is for McCarthy to be a Brown. Gregory, that's one of those narratives that has really taken off kind of in the media. I don't ever see that happening. I don't see Mike McCarthy going to Cleveland. Call me crazy, but I don't think that's where he ends up, if he is indeed gone from Green Bay. I no longer celebrate punt returns. Riley, that's good to know. It is noted. Should we cut Rodgers? I still believe in him. Yeah, Brett, no, you should still believe in Rodgers. No, they should not cut him. They just gave him $1 billion. What do you need to see this week to make you think we have a real chance at making a push for the postseason? A victory. A road victory for the first time in 2018. A sign that things are pointed in a better direction. Maybe not saying that they're going to make a run, but just win the game. Go win the game. Go play a complete game. Play all 4 quarters. Come out with a victory on the road. I don't care how you do it. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care if it's ugly. Just get the win. What do you think about Bill Cowher becoming our next head coach? You know, if it wasn't Bill Cowher, it would be John Gruden, but John Gruden's already got a job. People, move on from the Bill Cowhers and John Grudens of the world. Bill Cowher hasn't coached in how long? He's been sitting in a television studio for forever. And remember, he was with the Steelers for so long, and so many people wanted him fired in Pittsburgh, and then he finally got his Super Bowl at the end of his career. He's no better than Mike McCarthy, if you're upset with McCarthy. I mean, no, people, no. Move on. Anybody but Pete Carroll. That's a good sign waiting to be made. Can we get a new special teams coach? Eventually, one would think, but nothing's going to happen in the middle of the season. Should we bring back Jeff Jagodzinski? Fun times, fun times. What about Peyton Manning for head coach? No. Can someone ask Rodgers why he doesn't like to take the check down? Well, his next press availability is on Wednesday afternoon. I will ask some of my friends there on the beat to ask that question. Will the production from the rookie at wide receiver, do you see the Pack re-signing Cobb? Dalton, I don't. I've been asked this question in various ways throughout the season. It's hard to get a third contract in Green Bay. It's especially hard at a position where they often go young and like to develop guys, and they clearly have hit on 2 guys in this draft with Valdez-Scantling and Equanimeous St. Brown. I'd be very surprised if they brought him back. Now, if he were willing to come back at below market rate, maybe, but I don't see that happening. I think, he's a young man with a family. He's going to get paid, and I think that will most likely happen on the open market. Madden to replace Mike. I love all this Madden, Bruce Arians, who we got? Who else? Tony Dungy. A+ suggestions, everyone. With McCarthy play calling and being the main man behind the offense, what the hell does Joe Philbin do? Stephen, that is an excellent question, the answer to which remains a mystery to everyone outside 1265 Lombardi. Mike McCarthy did indicate that Joe Philbin weighed in on the decision to punt on 4th and 2, which obviously is not a plus on his side of the ledger, but as far as his day-to-day operations and or game day contributions, they remain a mystery. Why do you think Rodgers always looks for the big play, rarely hits the check down? Michael, because look at the Tanyan play. I mean, how great was that? Everyone loved it. It was fantastic. I jumped up here, sitting in this very seat, in this studio, in the Cheesehead TV watch party. Man, it got me high. It was better than any drug. Love it, right? Well, that's why. Going for glory, going for the gusto, going for the big one. And the thing is people always want to rail on McCarthy for abandoning the running game or for his scheme or whatever, but his quarterback's just as culpable. As long as McCarthy and Rodgers are joined together, they will always be about pushing the ball down the field. That's who they are. It's in their blood. It's just not going to change. And it's frustrating to watch when it doesn't work. But when it does work, man, it's like that scene in Trade Spotting where they take their first hit. So good. Is there any way that Green Bay takes a look at Banky for head coach? God, I hope hope so. Do you think Tanyan will get many snaps now? Spicy, that's a good question. I know Tanyan got his first big play, first reception in the NFL. Jimmy Graham will attempt to play through his broken thumb. That's what Mike McCarthy indicated earlier this afternoon. I do wonder if they get him in the mix a little bit more. McCarthy did say today he's ready. He's ready for this opportunity, etc. But with Mercedes Lewis unable to get on the field, I can't believe they're going to suddenly mix Tanyan in there liberally. But maybe. I'd like to see it. He caught everything in camp and in the preseason. And he's a fun guy. So we'll see. McCarthy threw Philbin under the bus. Philbin gets thrown under the bus by the driver. Is it being thrown under the bus if it's true? Just wondering. Raji for head coach. Perfect. Perfectly stated, Brett. All right, everybody, I'm going to have to jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours, but I'm blown away each and every day how many of you choose to show up here and share a little bit of your Packers time with me. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, share with your friends, tell them all about Cheesehead TV here on YouTube, on Facebook. Join our Patreon. Thank you to all of our patrons on Patreon. It's amazing what you guys support Packer Transplants. We'll be back Wednesday. Banky will be with me this week, so that'll be fun. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.